Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi, Nasser al-Mashni and Robert Martin. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Australia's only radio program that is totally dedicated to the Palestinian cause in English language. We'd like to welcome our listeners on the AM dial and those who will join us later on 3cr.org.au/podcasts. In today's episode, we will remember our great poet Mahmoud Darwish, and we will also talk about the latest event from APAN. So for this and more, stay with us and enjoy the episode. Good morning, Nasser.
Morning, Yusuf. How you doing?
I'm well, and today we have our poet Mahmoud Darwish, special episode on Mahmoud Darwish. But before that, I believe you also have some of the Palestinian events happening in our territory. Tell us more about that, Nasser.
Of course, Yusuf. And as we know, we probably need 3 or 4 episodes for Mahmoud Darwish. But just to give our listeners an update of where things are at on the ground in Australia. On Wednesday night in Canberra, APAN, the Australia Palestine Advocacy Network, held a dinner. In fact, closed off an entire restaurant. 120 members of the public. There was MPs, senators, ambassadors.
Congratulations.
Yeah, members of the media. And all the conveners of the Parliamentary Friends of Palestine were there. And a parliamentary friendship, Yusuf, requires both a member of the opposition and a sitting member of the incumbent government. So Maria Van Vakenu and Mark Coulton, who's the Deputy Speaker of the House, a member of the National Party, as well as Janet Rice. They're the 3 conveners of the Parliamentary Friendship Group.
From the Greens.
Yes. So the 3 of them, along with Ross Hart, who's a Labor member, they, if you will, presented on their recent experiences, because they all attended this year trips to Palestine, facilitated by APAN and others, and the ambassador as well. And they spoke about their experiences, and if people go to the APAN Facebook page, you'll be able to see that speech live themselves and really get a benefit of seeing firsthand what our MPs experienced. And of particular import, as well as good as all of the talks were, and Maria's, Ross's, Janet's, one of the things that really impressed upon me was Mark Coulton's summation that it was, quote, like apartheid. And, this is from a member of the government, Deputy Speaker of the House, so a very significant person within the ruling coalition party. And Mark Coulton and Janet Rice and Maria Van Vakenu will be at the APAN dinner on the 27th of August, Sunday the 27th of August. So,
in Melbourne. Yeah,
in Melbourne. So our listeners, if they go to apan.org.au, they can buy a ticket, come along and hear from these people, meet us, Yusuf, as you know, and come on and do their bit and support Palestine
and
advocacy.
See how they can support Palestine.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Nasser. I think you're talking about a group, 7-year-old maybe group for putting together more magnificent events for Palestine in Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, and more.
Well, just keeping the flame alive. There's many people that along the journey have done such significant work, but to get to the point where we are now, and if we continue that through to the tremendous work of people within the Labor governments, Labor Party, to get, now the Queensland, the South Australian, the ACT, state conferences to pass motions requiring or asking of the federal Labor to recognise the State of Palestine. By all indications, later this month in WA, they will pass a similar motion.
Fingers crossed.
Victoria is scheduled to have their conference in March 18, and all of this is leading into the federal conference in July of 18, where, it's expected and it's believed that, in fact, the Federal Labor Party's next conference will support the unconditional recognition of Palestinian statehood. And this is in defiance of, the leader of the Labor Party. Shorten is though a member, I thought he was a member of the right, but he's in fact a member of the left. But he's a devout.
When it comes to Palestine,
he's a hardcore Zionist. But to give him his political credit, he's a shrewd political deal maker and pawnbroker, and he knows on this issue the party's moved away from him, so he's kept quiet. Yeah, so. Well, I don't think there'll be many Zionist supporters sending too much money Shorten's way based on what's going on there.
Well, congratulations again. And again, we'll remind our listeners of our upcoming APAN dinner on the 27th. And if they want to find out more, they can go to our website, apan.org.au.
That's fine. And I think I just wanted to just as we close out that topic and before we start with our main topic for the day, Yusuf, one of the insidious nature of just the way the Zionist lobby works. Bob Carr, as we know, has worked very hard in the first instance to get Palestine recognised, and with Julia Gillard saying no, she wants to vote against recognition, and then finally getting the Labor Party to abstain. That one of the really sickening, crazy stuff is Dreyfus and Danby, two Jewish members of the Labor Party, visited one of Bob Carr's employers, and Bob Carr's employed by a number of different think tanks, etc. But this particular one was a wealthy Chinese businessman, and they went there, and the purpose of their visit was to seek that he should use his position as a financial support of the think tank to press Bob Carr to stop expressing his opinion about Israel. I mean, Dreyfus is the shadow Attorney General. He was formerly our Attorney General. Now, Danby, we know, he's the Minister for Israel. We can accept that guy. But the Attorney General, he was our Attorney General, the highest law officer on the land. He's our shadow Attorney General. Based on polling, he's going to be our Attorney General again soon. That this guy could take time out of his day to visit
lobby for Israel.
A former foreign minister's current, if you will, employer, benefactor, or whatever you might want to call it, somebody who funds a think tank, and say, we'd like you to use your position to... I mean, it really is sickening.
It tells you how big and strong the Israeli lobby in Australia is.
But the best part about saying how big it is, and the sort of names they can call upon, is that they're losing.
Yep.
With Dreyfus going to see this guy, it hasn't stopped the movement up. Now, as we know, change doesn't happen on key... humanitarian grounds from the top down. As we know, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher were still shaking F.W. de Klerk's hands whilst Nelson Mandela was in jail. It's from the ground up, and this is the reality. The Zionists might be able to control the top end of town, but the humans are waking up, and they're sick to death of apartheid, of the killing of innocents, of the robbing of childhood, of all of the misery that is Gaza, of refugee camps, of all the broken promises that Israel continues to perpetuate.
Thank you, Nasser. And we will move on to our next and main topic this episode, which is the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish.
وحدي أدافع عن جدار ليس لي وحدي أدافع عن هواء ليس لي وحدي على سطح المدينة واقف أيوب مات وماتت العنقاء وانصرف الصحابة وحدي أراود نفسي الثكلى فتأبى أن تساعدني على نفسي ووحدي كنت وحدي عندما قاومت وحدي وحدة الروح الأخيرة.
So, Yusuf, that was Mahmoud Darwish. Let's talk about Darwish and his impact for Palestine, because the reality is most people saw Palestine and Palestinians as, towel heads wearing kafirs and terrorism and, the aeroplane hijacking of the 70s. But Darwish did something different for us.
To do justice to a person like Darwish and a poet like him, it's impossible to cover that within one episode, or even 3 or 4 episodes. But what we are going to do maybe in this few minutes is to shed some lights on stages of his life as a poet, as a politician, and as a journalist, because most people don't know that Darwish was not just a poet. He was an important politician, and he played an important role in forming the Palestinian political atmosphere, and also in as a journalist.
Because people don't know just how important he was in setting the agenda. And because we're so used to the more photogenic, Abu Omar, etc., that were more present in the face. Why don't we start backwards then and lead us off with his politics and the agenda setting that was his hallmark.
For example, the famous speech by Yasser Arafat in 1974, the Kalashnikov versus the olive branch.
My brothers and I had a T-shirt. Today I have come bearing an olive branch and a freedom fighter's gun. Do not let the olive branch fall from my hand.
Exactly. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And Mahmoud Darwish wrote that speech, was one of 3 people who contributed to writing the wording of that speech in Arabic language. And Edward Said translated it into English. So we're talking about
some phenomenal brains.
That we Palestinians, I can't see us compensating for the loss of, or for the vacuum created by the loss of Darwish and Edward Said. So also in the proclamation of state in 1988 in Algeria, what we call the independence speech, also Mahmoud Darwish wrote that speech for Yasser Arafat, the proclamation of statehood in Algeria, in diaspora. Mahmoud Darwish also was a member of the executive committee of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO. He was one of the, when we talk the executive committee, we're talking about the highest 12 members of PLO. And then you have the Palestine National Council, and then the other entities of PLO. So the executive committee, very fierce competition to win a seat there. And he was the only member who Arafat had to beg to join, because you needed a brain like Mahmoud Darwish. So these are just examples of his official political career. But of course, it came after an outstanding from a purely literature point of view, performance and life in literature.
Putting that to aside, let's go from the journey from his personal experience from Palestine, from Nakba through to first getting published.
Nasser, as we speak, I remember from the last Israeli hostility and offensive on Gaza in 2014, a picture of a destroyed Palestinian home with Mahmoud Darwish words written as graffiti on the destroyed or the remaining standing walls, saying على هذه الأرض ما يستحق الحياة, on this land what is worth living. And I think it's fair to ask the question, why Mahmoud Darwish? Why this quote particularly on the ruins of the house? What was in the mind of the owner of the destroyed house?
It's the brilliance of defiance of the Palestinian spirit.
Exactly. Also, I remember when I went to Burj al-Barajne refugee camp in Lebanon, reading the graffitis of Mahmoud Darwish, قف على ناصية الحلم وقاوم. Stand on the corner of your dreams and resist. And I can give you more and more and more examples of Darwish's poems on our walls. Mahmoud Darwish was born in 1943, which means he was 5 when he became stateless, when his family were kicked out from their home village of Al-Birwa near Akka to the north of Palestine. They fled to Lebanon. And a year later, they came back on foot to their village, Al-Birwa, to find it in ruins. So they went to the other village of Deir al-Asad. And here starts another journey for his family, for himself, growing up in a time where the Palestinians of Israel were under military laws, not civil laws. We're talking about a very long period, 14 years, from 1948 to 1962. under which the Palestinians who remained in Palestine were not treated as citizens like the Jews who migrated to historical Palestine and gained Israeli passports. So it was against the law to use Arabic language in public sphere. It was against the law to move from one village to another, from one city to another without a permit from the military commander. And the military permits were very hard to get anyway. It was against the law to use printed publications in Arabic language. Darwish spoke about his teachers in the 50s having to write curricula in their hands because there was no printed material for education. We're talking about really military laws that the Palestinians of Israel had to live under. Of course, Mahmoud Darwish, from that atmosphere, started what later became the literature of resistance, Adab al-Muqawama. And it's interesting how the literature of resistance was not born in exile, where the refugees in refugee camps were, but it was born in homeland, where the Palestinians were treated like refugees in their own homeland. And in this atmosphere came the poem that introduced him to other fellow Palestinians outside or in exile. سجل أنا عربي ورقم بطاقتي 50,000 وأطفالي 98 سيأتي بعد صيف فهل تغضب. Write down, I am an Arab and my identity card number is 50,000. I have 8 children and the 9th will come after a summer. Will you be angry?
Well, it's a conversation in defiance back to the soldier, isn't it?
Absolutely. And for that, he spent a year in prison for defying the commands or the military commands. But after that, he joined the Communist Party in Israel because that was the only platform. There was no Arab political parties. The only platform for Arabs where there is a little bit of equality, a little bit of rights is the Communist Party. And from there...
So to be clear, this is the Israeli Communist Party that allowed Arab members, yeah.
The Israeli Communist Party. And from there started another journey. Of course, it took him to Moscow, and from Moscow to Cairo, from Cairo to Beirut, and from Beirut to Paris, and from Paris to Tunis, and then back to Ramallah.
Let's stay in Paris for a second, because there's some fascinating... He had a fantastic journey in literature there. Tell us about his time in Paris, Yusuf.
Well, Paris came after the invasion of Lebanon, the expulsion of the Palestinian Liberation Organization from Beirut in 1982. After 82, Mahmoud Darwish found himself having to find another place to go to, and he had the luxury of choice, unlike the majority of the Palestinian fighters. He said, I could have gone to England, I could have gone to an Arab country, but I ended up in Paris. He actually saw the benefits of being in a country where you don't speak the language of, you are no one, nobody knows you, anonymous.
Yeah.
You don't have crowds around you everywhere you go to.
Because by this point he's famous. He can't walk an Arab street.
Yeah, by that point he was really one of the most famous poets in the Arab world. And in Paris he stayed for 10 to 12 years, and he wrote the highest peaks of his literature.
في المساء الأخير على هذه الأرض نقطع أيامنا عن شجيراتها ونعد الضلوع التي سوف نحملها معنا والضلوع التي سوف نتركها ها هنا في المساء الأخير. في المساء الأخير لا نودع شيئا ولا نجد الوقت كي ننتهي. كل شيء يظل على حاله. فالمكان يبدل أحلامنا ويبدل زواره.
On our last evening on this land, we chop our days from our young trees. Count the ribs we will take with us, and the ribs we will leave behind. On the last evening, we bid nothing farewell, nor find the time to end. Everything remains as it is. It is the place that changes our dreams and its visitors. Nasser, that was the first stanza from a poem he wrote in Paris towards the 500-year anniversary of the fall of Cordoba and Andalusia. The poem was titled 11 Planets to the Andalusia Sky. And in that poem, in that epic poem, he made the analogy between the last Arab city in Spain, Andalusia, Cordoba, falling in 1492, and the loss of Palestine. He actually referred to himself in that one, أنا آدم الجنتين فقدتهما مرتين. I am the Adam of the two Edens that I lost twice. And of course, the two Edens are Andalusia and Palestine. So, Nasser, I would easily say, I know I am not independent when it comes to a little biased, but I can freely tell you that had it not been for the Israeli lobby in the Nobel Prize, Mahmoud Darwish should have won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Mm-hmm. So in Paris, he wrote his highest peak of literature.
Well, we should say that. I mean, you know, we started out first talking about how he transcended the you know, the mud that was terrorism, that you know, it's freedom fighting as far as I'm concerned, but you know, the mud that was terrorism from the West's point of view, and became this, you know, should have been a Nobel laureate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's not my opinion. This is the opinion of Nobel Prize winners, and this is the opinion of people who are not pro-Palestinian nor pro-Israel, independent people who just read the work of Darwish, translated work, and come to caliber of it, and come to this conclusion. I also want to shed some light on his role as a journalist.
Yeah.
He became part of one of the Arab publications in 1948 in Haifa, and he developed his skills as a writer, not only as a poet, just writing journals and writing about the life, the intellectual life of the Arabs in the 48 areas. And he met Emil Habibi, the Palestinian famous novelist. He met Samih al-Qasim. He met also the elite of the Palestinians of Israel back then. And then came the 67 war. And it was actually, it was Mahmoud Darwish that made the first connection between the Palestinians of 48 and the Palestinians of West Bank after 67. He actually wanted to break that wall created by the war. Yeah. And he wanted to defy the separation of West Bank from their depth, whether in 48 or refugee camps. And he contacted Fadwa Tuqan, the sister of Ibrahim Tuqan, the one who wrote the lyrics of Mawtani. And he asked her to write something for his journal in Haifa, and she did. And he actually had to look for her through the devastation of Naksa. And he found her, he made the contact. It's a long story. She actually wrote him something, and he published it in Haifa. And by doing this simple act, he broke the barrier.
He created the connection.
He created the connection between the Palestinians in Haifa and the Palestinians in Nablus and West Bank. Also, his role in the famous journals in Lebanon in the 70s, the Shu'un Falastiniya, Palestinian Affairs Journal, and also he was the founder of Al-Carmel magazine. The highest peak of, when I mention these names, probably they are new names to our listeners, but I want them to know that we're talking about really fine pieces of literature and journalism, really professional, like I would say zero error type of, from language point of view, and you know me with language, and also from other levels, so really highly professional.
Because this is one of the things, I mean, when you go back and talk about the connection he made between Nablus and Haifa, this is without Facebook, without mobile phones. This is, hard slog, door knocking, do you know where she is? Because post-Naqsa and post-Nakba, there's no roads. You're trying to find somebody. You need somebody to remember that person walked past you.
There's no even telephones.
Yeah.
We're talking July 67, and we're talking that Israel started preventing phone calls from between. So it was a long story how he found her. He found her. He asked her to write his journal, something she did, and then came the first connection.
But then we go to Lebanon and those journals. And I remember my father they used to come out periodically every month, and we had a library of them. Let's speak to the caliber of those. I mean, you touched on it. People today, everything's done with a thumb. If I can't do it with my thumb on my phone screen,
then I'm not going to do it.
I'm not interested. The reality of communicating with the diaspora, and this was, where he really excelled in the early 70s, etc., in Lebanon, was, formulating those publications, getting them out to the masses.
Look, Darwish was an asset to the Palestinian revolution. And it was Yasser Arafat that discovered him. Of course, not as a man of literature, but as he wanted to give him the role. And in fact, the parity between the Arafat-Darwish parity, Arafat formulated and shaped the political identity of the Palestinians in the 70s, 60s, 80s. And Mahmoud Darwish formulated and shaped the literary and literature identity of Palestinians. So these two created the revolution, or contributed greatly to the
thinking revolution.
The thinking revolution, and then it comes with, and then when you add to them Edward Said and Walid al-Khalidi, and the intellectual weight of the Palestinian revolution in the 70s and 80s. So
they took us from a despised and not known indigenous people. The old will die and the young will forget. They took us from that mindset, that Zionist mindset, to where we are today.
The old died and the young didn't forget.
And
the young grew up and actually conveyed the message to the younger ones.
Absolutely.
And Darwish, to his credit, Darwish never belonged to any political party. Mm-hmm. Yes, he was closer to the Communist Party because of his upbringing, but he was not a member. He would always give you
Palestine first.
The Palestine first, the non-too political, and but nevertheless, his opposition was constructive always, and he never agreed for his name to be used by politicians. In fact, Gaddafi of Libya, Saddam of Iraq, in at least 5 occasions wanted him to visit Baghdad and Tripoli to give him the honor of basically the medal of Saddam or Iraq. But he didn't want to give credit to dictators to use his names, even if he was going to be awarded. And therefore, we're talking about a man of principle. We're talking about an outstanding man of literature, and we're talking about a really great politician. So it's like we started. It's impossible to cover Darwish in one episode, but I guess one thing we miss in his absence is not only the literature point of view, but also the contribution, the connection between literature, politics, media, and society in general.
Absolutely. And just as we're closing now, Yusuf, my family and I were in Ramallah only a couple of years ago. The Darwish Museum is something really to behold, whether it's his desk and the writings, but also just the caliber of and depth of his work that's on display for visitors to Palestine. So if you do find yourself in Palestine, please make sure that when you are in Ramallah, that you do get to the Darwish Museum. It's something really that you'll enjoy.
And I think with this we've come to the end of our episode, Nasser. We spoke about Mahmoud Darwish, and we spoke about the APAN dinner in Canberra and the upcoming dinner this month.
27th of August.
27th of August. But like I said, the discussion on Darwish and literature will continue. We'll revisit this topic in future episodes. So thanks for being with us. Another episode of Palestine Remembered, and do remember to tune in next Saturday for more reflections on Palestine. Until then, this is Nasser and Yusuf and Robert wishing you the best of time, and salam.